The blueprint hidden in a broken market. In every era, there is a moment when the world looks stable on the surface while quietly fracturing underneath. People go about their routines, unaware that a single overlooked pattern is about to reshape everything they think they understand. And sometimes, the key to that transformation hides in the ruins everyone else has learned to ignore. To grasp why this story matters now, we have to step back into a time when the market was drifting without direction. The rules that once brought certainty no longer worked, yet no one dared to question them. Confidence faded, innovation slowed, and companies clung to traditions as if time itself could be persuaded not to move. What emerged was an invisible grid of inefficiency, a map of problems nobody wanted to solve. Today, we face echoes of that same hesitation, the same fear of acting, while everything quietly shifts beneath our feet. Our story begins with a flaw, not a breakthrough, a simple mismatch between what people needed and what companies delivered. At first, no one noticed. The system continued its slow churn, disguising the cracks with glossy reports and familiar slogans. But beneath the surface, pressure built. Customers grew restless. Entire sectors drifted into patterns that no longer made sense. Then came the moment that changed everything. A young analyst, buried in spreadsheets no one else cared to review, spotted an anomaly others had dismissed. A repeating shape, a rhythm hidden in the numbers. It wasn't dramatic at first, just a subtle deviation that refused to disappear. But this anomaly carried a secret. Behind it was a blueprint for a market waiting to be rebuilt. It revealed how misaligned incentives had piled up for years, and how a single shift in structure could unlock a different future. Most people ignored it. Some laughed at it. But the blueprint didn't go away. It kept tugging at the corners of every projection, every forecast, every assumption leaders held onto. And as the analyst traced it further, a question formed, one that would challenge the foundations of an entire industry. What if the market wasn't broken by accident? What if it had been designed to break? The anomaly became an obsession. Day after day, the analyst returned to the same cluster of data points, convinced they carried a message others had missed. Each comparison revealed a deeper flaw in the market structure, like discovering that a building everyone trusted had been constructed on softened ground. The questions grew heavier. Why had no one noticed? And if they had, why had they stayed silent? As the research expanded, a pattern emerged. Companies across the sector were making decisions that looked coordinated, yet none of them had ever spoken to one another. It was as if they were following an unwritten script, an inherited method of operating that no longer matched the world around them. The analysts mapped their strategies one by one, and an uncomfortable truth took shape. The market wasn't broken randomly. It was collapsing under the weight of choices made decades earlier, choices that had been treated as sacred. The deeper the analyst dug, the clearer the tension became. A single insight connected every failing part of the system. The incentives were backwards. The market rewarded the appearance of stability rather than genuine progress. Growth was measured by repetition, not innovation. And so companies optimized for sameness, clinging to familiar formulas, even as the world shifted around them. It was a cycle no one dared to break, because breaking it meant stepping into uncertainty. Yet the cracks continued to widen. Consumers changed faster than the companies serving them. Technology pushed new demands into the world, but the industry responded with old answers. The blueprint the analyst discovered wasn't just a theoretical model. It was a map showing exactly where the market would fracture next. For those willing to read it, the future was already visible. But sharing that insight proved far more difficult than uncovering it. Executives dismissed the findings as overanalysis. Colleagues warned the analyst to stop digging. Some feared the implications. Others feared looking foolish for missing something so fundamental. The silence felt deliberate, like a shield protecting the comfort of the status quo. Still, the analyst pressed forward. Each layer of data peeled back another truth, revealing a slow-motion collision between what the market had been and what it was becoming. And beneath that collision lay the beginnings of a conflict that would force the entire industry to confront a reality it had spent years avoiding. Doubt began to spread the moment the analyst presented the full model. Not because the data was weak, but because it was too strong. It exposed every hidden fracture, every quiet misalignment, every assumption leaders had used as the foundation of their comfort. The room bristled with tension. Some stared at the numbers as if they were staring at their own reflection for the first time. Others refused to look at all. What followed was resistance disguised as caution. Executives asked for more reports, more comparisons, more historical context, anything to delay the possibility that their long-trusted strategies were no longer safe. Each request added time, but not clarity. The model remained the same every time. The market was drifting toward a decisive tipping point, and pretending otherwise would not stop it. As the debate dragged on, the outside world began shifting faster than the boardroom conversations. Consumers abandoned old habits. Competitors experimented with bold new approaches. Technology accelerated past expectations, exposing how slow the industry had become. The blueprint the analyst discovered didn't just highlight the cracks, it predicted them. Every delayed decision made the consequences more visible. Inside the company, divisions formed. A few visionaries understood the implications immediately. They saw opportunity in the chaos, believing the blueprint could guide the company into a new era if they acted fast enough. But others feared what change would demand: risk, investment, vulnerability. For them, the old model offered comfort, even as it decayed beneath their feet. Then came the catalyst. A rival firm, much smaller and nearly unnoticed, launched a product built on principles eerily similar to those in the analyst's blueprint. It was imperfect, unpolished, even risky, but it revealed what the future could look like. Markets reacted, investors turned, and the industry felt a ripple that grew into a shockwave. Suddenly, the questions inside the company became urgent. How had they been beaten to their own discovery? How much time remained before the shift became irreversible? The blueprint was no longer a theoretical warning, it was a countdown, and every leader in the room sensed the same thing. They had already lost the luxury of moving slowly. As pressure mounted, the analysts faced a new challenge: convincing a divided leadership to take a leap they were still afraid to name. The conflict wasn't just about data anymore. It was about identity, pride, and the fear of rebuilding a future from the wreckage of the past. And the most difficult decisions were now impossible to avoid. The turning point arrived in a single, uneasy meeting. The rivals' early success had shaken the industry, and the air in the boardroom felt heavier than ever before. Every leader understood what the blueprint implied, but admitting it meant acknowledging years of missed opportunities. Silence lingered until the analyst spoke, not with urgency, but with clarity. The market wasn't collapsing. It was trying to evolve, and they still had time, if they chose to move. The choice was agonizing. The old model had defined careers, shaped strategies, and built empires. Abandoning it felt like erasing the very identity of the company. But staying loyal to it meant surrendering the future. The tension reached its peak when the latest market figures arrived in the room. The predictions the analyst had mapped months earlier were unfolding with near-perfect accuracy. The blueprint had become reality. In that moment, the company finally shifted, not with a dramatic declaration, but with a quiet, unanimous realization. Change was no longer a risk. It was survival. Teams were reorganized. Projects once dismissed as too unconventional were revived. Innovation, once an afterthought, became the center of every conversation. The blueprint that had been ignored, doubted, and resisted became the foundation of their new direction. Adopting it wasn't smooth. It demanded unlearning old habits and embracing uncertainty. But slowly, the company began to see the market through fresh eyes. They identified opportunities hidden inside the fractures. They rebuilt systems that had once held them back. And they discovered that the broken market wasn't a curse. It was an invitation to rethink everything. The blueprint didn't promise an easy path. It offered something more valuable: alignment with what the world was becoming. And as the company recalibrated itself around that vision, it found a momentum it had been missing for years. The rival that once threatened them now served as proof that transformation was possible. The market that once felt chaotic now looked navigable. The cracks that once signaled collapse now marked the beginning of reinvention. Looking back, the moment the analysts found that anomaly seems almost ordinary, yet it triggered a cascade that reshaped an entire industry's trajectory. It reminded everyone that markets seldom break without reason, and that within every fracture lies a chance to build something better. Today, the same truth echoes across countless sectors. Patterns are shifting, incentives are changing, and the next blueprint may already be buried in data someone hasn't looked at twice. Subscribe to join the journey.